Behind the scenes, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau detested one another. Despite working on 10 films together, Lemmon claimed that working with Matthau was an absolute nightmare, while Matthau dubbed him a conceited pretty boy. For decades, their funny relationship deceived America, but now we know they were concealing sinister secrets, violent altercations, and a rivalry so acrimonious it followed them to their last resting places. Walter Matthau was raised in the Lower East Side, one of the most dangerous areas in New York City. There, survival meant daily battle, and life was difficult. He was born to immigrant parents on October 1, 1920. His mother Rose is from Lithuania, while his father Melos is from Ukraine. However, Walter's father left when he was just 3 years old, leaving Rose to take care of the 2 young sons by herself. She barely made enough money to feed them while working long hours at garment factories. They shifted between small, chilly apartments. Things deteriorated further when the Great Depression struck, frequently just to avoid paying rent they couldn't afford. Everywhere money was tight. Additionally, it became almost hard for Walter's family to make ends meet. Walter tried his best to assist even as a little youngster. In addition to attending school, he began taking up odd jobs to supplement his income. He quickly gained street smarts. At an early age, he even started gambling by putting up games to win a few bucks. Once a means of providing for his family, that habit would follow him throughout his life. He continued to attend public school 25, junior high school 64, and then Seward Park High despite the turmoil at home. Walter, however, did more than merely live. He discovered a thing that made him feel purposeful. When he was just 4 years old, he made his stage debut. Although it was a little role, it gave him a spark. By the age of 11, he was working as a snack vendor in 2nd Avenue Yiddish theaters. These theaters drew large audiences of immigrants who missed the old country because they were vibrant and traditional. Walter sold more than simply candies. He paid attention. In order to comprehend the shows, he learned himself Yiddish, and he kept a careful eye on performers. Those stages featured some of the greatest artists of the day, and Walter took in everything they had to offer. Before long, he began requesting minor roles in the productions. First for a few more pennies, then for actual stage time, he got them. At the age of 16, he was cast in The Dishwasher, a lengthy musical comedy, in 1936. He relished every second of it. He was reading Shakespeare at the same time, and committing lines to memory. He thought Mozart's music was great. He was not only observing the surroundings, he was examining it, sensing it, getting ready for something more significant. Then everything changed. When the United States entered World War II with the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, Walter enlisted in the Army Air Corps. He departed New York in 1942 and joined a bomber plane as a radio man gunner. He flew risky missions over Europe as a member of the 453rd Bombardment Group. The task was cruel. During the Battle of the Bulge and several other significant actions, his battalion witnessed fierce battle. It was terrible to fly in those planes, and many people never returned. Before the conflict was over, Walter received 6 combat stars. He was impacted by those years and had a greater understanding of the humor and suffering in the world. He was resolved to pursue the goal that had begun in the Yiddish theaters. When he returned home in 1945, he could go to theatrical school because of the GI Bill. Erwin Piscator, a well-known German filmmaker, was his teacher at the New School for Social Research. His style was influenced by the instruction. He was able to perform with genuine feeling, instead of merely memorized phrases by delving deeper into his characters. His personal life was progressing along with his acting profession, which was just beginning to take form. He surrounded himself with other performers in the post-war years, including B. Arthur, Harry Belafonte, and Rod Steiger. He met Grace Geraldine Johnson in that artistic world. He married her in 1948, and the two of them had 2 kids, Jenny and David. However, life remained unpredictable. On Broadway, Walter struggled, appearing in unsuccessful musical after production. He appeared in 12 short-lived plays between 1950 and 1954. After 11 years, the marriage terminated in 1959 due to the strain of juggling a family and pursuing a profession. The path to Broadway stardom, for Walter Matthau, wasn't easy or quick. Things weren't going well for him in 1961. His career appeared to be at a standstill after he starred in the box office failure. Once there was a Russian, then something changed. In A Shot in the Dark, he was cast, which debuted in New York at the Booth Theater. Julie Harris and a teenage William Shatner were among the well-known actors in the French scripted piece. Critics were initially unimpressed, but when word got out, the program gained popularity and ran for more than a year. Matthau's approach to playing a detective became his trademark. It was humorous and incredibly human. He received his first Tony Award for that performance. It demonstrated that he was someone to watch rather than merely a supporting actor. Intriguingly, Matthau appeared in the film adaptation of the play, but in a completely different role. Things at home were also going nicely at this time. He was expecting his first kid, and he and his wife Carol were content. The fact that Matthau was 41 years old at the time of all of this demonstrated how long he had been waiting for his big break. Matthau received the job that would permanently change people's perceptions of him in 1964, just a few years later. In The Odd Couple, he played Oscar Madison, a messy, sulky sports journalist who was quite different from his tidy freak flatmate, played by Art Carney. Mike Nichols directed, and Neil Simon wrote the show, which became an immediate hit. Audiences adored Matthau so much that he won his second Tony Award, and his disheveled charisma lighted up the stage. He didn't appear to be acting at all, according to people. Oscar Madison was all he was. Because of the play's immense popularity, tickets were being resold for exorbitant amounts. One sequence in particular became iconic, in which Oscar simultaneously cooks a meal, rants at his poker friends, and answers a phone call. Matthau became an actual leading man as a result of the role. It's interesting to note that he nearly declined the role out of fear of being typecast, but his wife persuaded him to accept it by claiming it was ideal for him. She was correct. Shortly after, Matthau became a cinematic star courtesy to the fortune cookie in 1966. For the first time, Matthau and Jack Lemmon were coupled in the Billy Wilder-directed movie. Matthau earned an Academy Award for his portrayal as Whiplash Willie, a dubious lawyer, but he almost died filming the film. He had emergency surgery after suffering a heart attack just over halfway through the filming process. The studio tried to replace him after the project was put on hold for 2 months, but Wilder refused. Without Matthau, he claimed, there wouldn't be a film. Even though Matthau was still in agony, when he got back to the set, he persevered and completed the movie. Everything changed because of that job. According to Wilder, Matthau became a whole different type of star following the fortune cookie. Despite the studio's desire for a more well-known actor, such as Frank Sinatra, Jack Lemmon had actively lobbied for him to get the part. Matthau remarked, "I'd like to thank everyone who helped me get this award except Jack Lemmon, who stole most of my scenes," as he won the Oscar. His performance was praised by critics. According to Pauline Kael, he was so pessimistic that it strangely seemed hopeful. In addition to making money, the film elevated Matthau to a prominent position in Hollywood. Matthau also had highs and lows in his personal life over these same years. After a protracted affair that started while they were working on a play together, he married Carol Grace in 1959. Carol had a complex history that included allegations of abuse and 2 unsuccessful marriages to author William Saroyan. However, she claimed to have discovered something new in Matthau, someone who was nice and enthusiastic. In 1962, they had a boy named Charles, who was named after Carol's stepfather, an influential figure in the aviation sector. The infant even had well-known godparents, journalist Lillian Ross and actor Richard Widmark, but it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Due to his severe gambling addiction, Matthau accumulated more than $350,000 in debt by the middle of his 60s. Today, that would be more over $3 million. Carol remained by his side, stating that she would not allow their marriage to be ruined by money. Because love was the most important thing to her, she jokingly quipped that other spouses would yell about a gambling problem like his, but she didn't care. Jack Lemmon's journey began dramatically, literally in a lift, while Matthau was leaving his imprint on theater and television. He didn't even reach the delivery room before coming into the world. He was born in Massachusetts in 1925. Lemmon was raised in a comfortable environment because his father was employed for the Donut Corporation of America. His early years, however, were difficult in other respects. Before the age of 12, he spent 2 whole years in hospitals, primarily because of severe ear issues. He missed a lot of school and underwent several operations. His parents' tumultuous marriage only made matters worse. Perhaps as a result of their religious convictions, they never got divorced. But despite everything, the tension persisted. He wanted to act. Lemmon knew, when he was just 4 years old, his father cast him in his first play. He was addicted by the age of 8, even while he recovered from surgery. Being in a school play, and missing his lines, but enjoying the laughs it produced, is one of his favorite early memories. He claimed that feeling welcomed was more important than being hilarious. Lemmon attended Phillips Andover, Rivers Country Day School, and Harvard for his schooling. He demonstrated at Andover that he was not the ill child that others had recalled. He was humorous and sporty. By the time he was a teenager, he had taught himself to play the piano and was entertaining his peers with comedy and music. His father intended him to major in business at Harvard, but Lemmon was drawn to theatrical. He became president of the renowned Hasty Pudding Club and participated in all of the campus theater organizations. Harvard advised him to quit acting after his grades declined. He therefore began to use fictitious names, like Timothy Orange, and continued to perform covertly. Under those names, he even created and performed in his own comedies. Nothing was going to keep Lemmon from taking the platform. Everything was disrupted by World War II. At the age of 20, Lemmon became an officer after completing a unique training program to join the Navy. He worked primarily away from direct action as a communications officer aboard an aircraft carrier. Despite serving for less than a year, he gained a wider perspective. He returned to Harvard to complete his degree after the war. He even returned to the Navy years later as a reserve and made instructional videos during his brief stint in Vietnam. The actor who portrayed so many humorous parts had a military background, although most fans were unaware of this. After earning his degree, Lemmon relocated to New York in 1947 to pursue his acting career. His father had only loaned him $300. Despite his uncertainty, his father approved of him and provided him one crucial piece of advice: "I'll give up when I can no longer find romance in a loaf of bread." At first, Lemmon had trouble. He performed in the Old Nick Music Hall, where he played the piano and cracked jokes. He wasn't always compensated at all. On weekends, it was only a supper and whatever money remained. But he continued. He took on odd jobs, worked in radio dramas, summer theater, and gradually began landing TV parts. He and actress Cynthia Stone, whom he eventually married, co-starred in a brief series in 1949. When he was cast in Room Service on Broadway in 1953, that was his big break. That attracted the attention of a Columbia Pictures talent scout. He also starred opposite Judy Holliday in his first movie a year later. After then, everything began to shift. The movie was Jack Lemmon's major Hollywood break. You Ought to Experience It in 1954. However, his name nearly lost him the part even before the cameras started rolling. Harry Cohn, the head of Columbia Pictures, disliked the last name Lennon. He advised Jack to alter it to Lennon because he was afraid that if the movie didn't work, critics would create jokes. Jack quickly knocked the notion down. He made the joke that if people thought of Lennon, they may think he was Lennon, which might be seen as un-American during the stressful McCarthy era. Lemmon lived up to his moniker. Given that he had previously mostly worked in live television, it was a daring decision. Despite his more than 400 performances, he didn't believe that performers like him belonged in movies. He thought that attractive individuals, not actual performers, were the target audience for films. Nevertheless, he took a gamble, and it paid off. 5 years later, Lemmon featured in a movie that would alter both his career and the course of cinema. He and Tony Curtis portrayed musicians who disguised themselves as ladies in order to elude criminals in the 1959 film Some Like It Hot. It was a bold comedy that went beyond what was then permitted in Hollywood. The film's enormous popularity contributed to the repeal of previous censorship laws. Theaters throughout the nation were crowded. It grossed about $2.5 million in its first month in just 96 theaters, which was a huge amount in 1959. Both reviewers and spectators enjoyed Lemmon's performance. In addition to receiving a British BAFTA Award and a Golden Globe, he was nominated for an Oscar. The movie helped establish his reputation as a leading comic actor, despite the fact that he did not win the Oscar that year. The Library of Congress recognized it as one of the most significant motion pictures in American history decades later. One movie demonstrated Lemmon's emotional range, while another made viewers giggle. He featured in Save the Tiger, a considerably smaller film with a far more profound theme, in 1973. In the Vietnam War, he portrayed Harry Stoner, a troubled businessman. The movie barely made it and almost didn't get created at all. Lemmon worked for years to have the script made even though the studios didn't want a message film. He even consented to work for a pitiful $165 per week or less, a portion of the earnings. Due to a limited budget, the film was shot on location in Los Angeles with the use of a new mobile film unit. Lemmon's performance was hailed by reviewers when the film was eventually released. The only person in history to win both a Best Supporting Actor and Best Actor award, he went on to win the Oscar for Best Actor. Even if the movie didn't make a lot of money, it was nonetheless a proud occasion. With the 1982 political drama Missing, which was based on a true story, Lemmon took yet another chance. He portrayed Ed Horman, a father trying to find his son who disappeared during a Chilean coup. Although the video never mentioned the nation, its message was unmistakable, and the Chilean government outlawed it. To ensure that the character felt authentic, particularly with regard to his Christian beliefs, Lemmon collaborated closely with the actual Ed Horman. There was one very silent scene. "What is Christian Science?" someone asks him. "It's about faith." Lemmon's character replies simply, when asked, "What do you believe in?" He responds honestly. The essence of the film and Lemmon's subdued acting talent were encapsulated in that sentence. Lemmon's life had yet another significant transformation a few years before to going missing. Walter Matthau met him. Billy Wilder, the film's director in 1966, wanted Matthau to portray the gregarious lawyer in The Fortune Cookie. The studio was uncertain. They wanted someone more well-known, like Jackie Gleason or Frank Sinatra, but Wilder refused to back down. Lemmon concurred, and the outcome was ideal. Their connection was magical from the first time they were on the same screen. While Matthau was his cunning brother-in-law, Lemmon portrayed a kind, caring cinematographer. Even though Mathau's heart attack forced the production to halt, the movie was a success, and he received an Oscar. Costume designers had to cover up his weight loss with bulky jackets, because he had shed 30 pounds by the time he returned. Curiously, Lemmon also lost weight while shooting, 25 pounds, probably as a result of solidarity or stress. Another level of realism was introduced by the film's football sequences. They used hundreds of oblivious spectators as extras and real sportsmen to shoot during a Cleveland Browns game. A college squad helped out even when the Browns were unavailable for reshoots. Matthau and Lemmon were complete opposites. Lemmon was consistently kind, well-prepared, and accurate. Before he came to the set, he was familiar with the full screenplay. In contrast, Matthau was notoriously irritable and erratic. He didn't care who heard him say anything he wanted. However, such distinctions made their on-screen collaborations memorable. Lemmon was little and well-groomed, tall and disheveled. Matthau had a deep, gravelly voice. Just by being so dissimilar, their voices made for amusement. They got back together for The Odd Couple in 1968. Lemmon wasn't initially cast, even though Matthau had previously performed as Oscar on stage. Well-known artists like Dick Van Dyke and Frank Sinatra were taken into consideration. However, Lemmon portrayed the tidy freak Felix in the final film adaptation. Matthau made a comeback as the untidy Oscar. They become one of the most recognizable pairs in cinema. The film was a huge success and spawned a sequel and television series. The charm was enhanced by their genuine friendship. They appeared together on the top page once more in 1974, this time portraying blustery newspaper guys. Compared to their previous work, it was a faster-paced, darker comedy. Although it wasn't as successful, the film showcased a different aspect of their abilities. Their ability to fire lines back and forth like machine guns was praised by critics. They returned with Grumpy Old Men in 1993, after a few years of silence. The movie was just intended to be a modest Christmas release. However, it became quite popular. Two grumpy neighbors arguing over the same woman were portrayed by Lemmon and Matthau. Viewers enjoyed seeing them quarrel and play practical jokes on one another. However, underneath the humor, the film conveyed a serious message. There is always time to live, alteration, or to risk anything. In 1995, a follow-up was released, continuing their winning streak and attracting a whole new fan base. Exactly 30 years after the first Odd Couple movie, their last collaboration was The Odd Couple 2, released in 1998. For years the concept had lain dormant, until Grumpy Old Men's popularity gave it a boost. They used the same soundstage as the first film, and shot all throughout California. Unfortunately, the magic didn't come back completely. Audiences weren't as enthusiastic, and critics were critical. Nevertheless, it was more interesting to watch Lemmon and Matthau hype the movie than the actual film. They remained the same off-screen. Matthau is wild and rumbling, whereas Lemmon is crisp and neat. Despite the film's failure, it marked the end of a collaboration that had lasted more than 30 years. When Walter Matthau was a young boy, he began gambling. He once told his mother that he had been gambling since he was 6 years old, a joke he made while growing up on the Lower East Side tenements of New York. She simply was unaware of it. He was already attracted to the excitement of taking chances as a youngster, and was organizing rooftop card games named Bankers and Brokers. His mother saw the hazardous preoccupation for what it was. Gambling is a dreadful poison, according to her, and that's what it would be for Walter. On New Year's Day of 1950, things became serious for him. He chose to wager $100 on a horse while in Miami with his friend filmmaker Martin Ritt. That was the end of it. The horse lost. He became enamored. This tremendous accomplishment, he later remarked, clinched the deal. Gambling became a part of his life after that. He couldn't pass a craps table without trying his luck, and he gambled on basketball games and horses. However, money wasn't the only factor. Matthau saw gambling as a means of escape. The globe, he claimed, shrank to a dot where everything else was irrelevant. Don Siegel, the director, allegedly claimed that Walter didn't even like winning. He lost a lot, and that was the true joy for him. According to Matthau, the majority of his lifetime earnings, roughly $50 million, went to bookmakers. According to some, he lost more, over $5 million overall. When Grumpier Old Men was being filmed, Kevin Pollak said he liked the script. Matthau said, "I owe $2 million, but the script is terrible." It was a shadow that would last a lifetime, not simply a habit. According to reports, his selections for the next week's horse races were listed at the back of his funeral program after his passing. Until the very end, that was Walter Matthau. Despite having a slightly different appearance, Jack Lemmon battled his own issues. He played Joe Clay, an alcoholic in the 1962 film Days of Wine and Roses. The performance was intensely personal, passionate, and unvarnished. On Inside the Actors Studio, Lemmon acknowledged that he had been struggling with alcoholism for many years. He and director Blake Edwards were both drinking excessively when the movie was being filmed. The film's tragic depiction of addiction was not only fiction, as many were unaware, it was a mirror. Lemmon's character in the film begins as a successful public relations professional who drinks to cope and fit in, but he gradually loses his mind. In one scenario, he is strapped into a straitjacket, trembling and experiencing withdrawal-related hallucinations. It's nearly impossible to see Lemmon's performance in that moment. Critics described its honesty as frightening. Joe's frantic outburst at his wife in one point in particular caught my attention. His eyes were filled with hatred, desperation, in his tone. Although Lemmon received an Oscar nomination for the part, the influence was far-reaching. Blake Edwards stopped drinking after filming. After a while, Lemmon and his co-star Lee Remick joined Alcoholics Anonymous. Like moviegoers, They had been shocked by the film. Later, both as an actor and as a person, Lemmon referred to the part as one of the most significant in his life. It was art that did more than mimic reality. It questioned it and altered it. Matthau's health started to deteriorate over time. It began with a heart attack while filming The Fortune Cookie in 1966. Although he had bypass surgery in 1976 as a result, his cardiac issues persisted. In the 1990s, things deteriorated. He contracted pneumonia while photographing sullen elderly guys in frigid Minnesota. His survival stunned the physicians. They said they couldn't believe he was still breathing and that his lungs were full. He entered the hospital using his persona from the movie, Max Goldman, in order to avoid detection. The issues accumulated during the ensuing years: congestive heart disease, kidney failure, excruciating back pain, and even a colon tumor that required removal. In 1999, he spent more than 2 months in the hospital due to another case of pneumonia. His body was weakening. When Lemmon went to see him, he was horrified by what he saw: skin and bones. Matthau muttered that he had no idea why they had kept him alive. "Why don't they simply release me?" Even after he asked, he continued to make jokes. He never lost his sense of humor. Hanging Up, his final movie, was out in 2000. In contrast to Diane Keaton, Meg Ryan and Lisa Kudrow, he portrayed a dying father. His actual state was reflected in the character. He had to be admitted to the hospital immediately following the conclusion of shooting since he was so ill during filming. His final performance had been his real-life farewell after 50 years in front of the camera. Matthau passed away after a major heart attack on July 1, 2000. A year later, he was 79. He left behind his son and his wife, Carol, whom he had remarried following a divorce, Charles. Hollywood lost one half of an incredible combo in addition to a comedy icon with Matthau's death. Jack Lemmon's tenure was brief. He never lost his passion for performing, even as his health deteriorated. He collected a Lifetime Achievement Award over the phone from his hospital bed in December 2000, a few months before he passed away. Despite having diverticulitis, he mustered the strength to participate in the event. After contracting pneumonia a few months later, he had another operation. The public was unaware that Lemmon had been fighting bladder cancer in secret for 2 years, but he continued to labor. Surrounded by family, Lemmon passed away on June 27, 2001, at the age of 76. He was laid to rest at Los Angeles' Westwood Village Memorial Park. As though he were playing a last-minute role, his tombstone says, "Jack Lemmon in."